From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now on BGN Radio. Hello and welcome to another episode of the BGN Draft Show. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined today by my co-host on Chalk Talk, Mark. I hurt my arm getting a backpack out of my car, Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Wimpy Old Man. Mark Henry Jr. _ Be sure to check out his Tough Cover radio show every Saturday. Mark, other than the arm, how are you doing today?
Yes, sources are indicating, NFL sources around the league are indicating that Mark Henry Jr.'s draft stock is falling mightily down the draft board. Once there have been rumors of him getting hurt doing really normal things. So yeah, it's a concern. I think I'm probably going to go undrafted.
UDFA, that means you get to pick your own landing spot. That's better than being a 7th round pick. So
that's true.
I'm also joined by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast / old man Deibs. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Deibs, I think you said you threw your back out the other day getting groceries out of the car or something.
Yeah, we were talking about getting old, and you're old when you're like putting groceries in your car and your back just completely popped. But I can also confirm that Mark and I will not be invited to the upcoming NFL Scouting Combine.
Yeah, well, if it makes you guys feel any better, a couple of weeks ago, I hurt my wrist doing dishes. So cast iron skillets are the worst. Don't let anybody ever tell you any different. So anyways, to the show for today. We're going to be doing we're each going to be doing a 4-round Eagles mock draft. Next week, we'll get back to positional rankings. I think we're going to be doing our top running backs. But we wanted to do a mock draft. And last year, if you listened to the show back then, we would do mock drafts and then put them up against each other in a poll to see who did the best. And we're going to try something a little bit different this year. We're going to war game out 3 different scenarios. And see how those drafts end up. And so the scenario that Deibs is going to be playing out for us is that of the Eagles finally, Mark, you'll have to give me the year again, but finally taking a defensive back in the first round of the draft. When's the last time that happened? 2005, is that right?
It's Lido. It's like 2002 or 2003, something like that, 2002. Something in that range. 2002, yeah. And the last time we taken one in the top 24 was 2017.
All right, so Deibs is going to be playing out a scenario that hasn't happened in 22 years. The Eagles selecting a defensive back in the first round. Mark is going to be playing out a scenario where the Eagles have traded Hassan Reddick for a 2nd-round pick and see how that goes. And I'm going to be playing out a scenario where Jason Kelce has announced his retirement. And so the Eagles address the offensive line in the first round. So just an idea how some different scenarios could play out. But Deibs, we're going to let you go first. We're going to make all of the picks in a row so we don't get confused skipping around. So I will share your screen. Those of you that are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see the simulator. We're using PFF for this one. Obviously, you can listen on audio platforms and you'll get the gist here. But Deibs is on the clock. We're looking for defensive back in the first round.
As I'm looking at this, Cooper DeJean went number 8. Nate Wiggins, number 10. Let's keep it rolling here. Terrion Arnold is now off the board here to the Seattle Seahawks. I'm looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Do the Eagles consider trading up? Let's roll it just one more time and see what happens. Quinyon Mitchell is off the board. We're going to move up here and solidify. They are liking this. All right, we're going to move up to number 20 here. Wait, that didn't work. I screwed it up. But anyway, we're sitting here, pick number 22, as I tried to offer the trade, and I must have hit the wrong button.
You know what? Hey, you can still just say you took Kool-Aid.
I was definitely going to move up to take Kool-Aid McKinstry. But we're doing this live. So we're going to trade out. You know what? We're going to look at our possible trades. Baltimore Ravens. I will take pick 62 from you. Let's try that again.
Add something on your end.
Yep.
Yeah, just.
All right, so we are trading a little bit back and going to get some assets, especially for this Eagles defense. Maybe not. We'll see. Totally screwed that up here. But the Eagles are on the clock here at pick number 30. A lot of different routes the Eagles could go here. A lot of guys that I like a lot will surely be on the board. And it's the guy that I've circled on my big board for quite some time is Cameron Kinchens here. Pick number 30 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Just a do-it-all safety. They haven't had one of those guys in quite some time. Kinchens can play at the line. He can play the slot. He can play deep. He's a great athlete. The Eagles are now back on the clock here. Pick number 50. I'm looking at who's available. And this is a no-brainer. He's my number one linebacker for the 2024 draft. Is Edgerrin Cooper. He's a great contrast to Nakobe Dean. Much bigger than Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Great athlete. He's a great tackler, great blitzer as well. If we see that from Fangio, we'll see. Sitting at pick number 54. Give me a second to look at what we have available.
So what have you taken so far again? The positions you've taken
safety and linebacker or my one
safety
and
linebacker.
two. My 1 and 2 there.
Corner, D-line, receiver.
This one is a guy that I've circled on my big board for quite some time. It is Mike Sanderstill, cornerback out of Michigan. He'll fix the Eagles slot position for the next 10 years. He's just an unbelievable athlete. You watch Michigan's tape. Like that defense was just loaded with names. Mike Sanderstill was arguably their core guy there. So sitting at pick number 62, we have addressed the back seven and then some: linebacker, safety, corner. Let's see what we're going to do next.
I got to be honest, Sanderstill was a guy I didn't know was coming out. He was a guy I was very familiar with at Michigan, and somehow it just slipped through the cracks for me until about a week or so ago that he was coming out. I think he was lower on PFF's list and has risen up as of late. Watching his tape, he might be a guy that continues to rise for me. He's in my somewhere in my top 50, top 60 area.
Pick number 62. I'm going with my favorite slot receiver in this draft on day 2. He is Malachi Corley. Make sure you go check the tape on him. It would be a phenomenal number 3 between AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Malachi Corley. Once you get that guy in space, man, he's just lights out, man. Really fun prospect. So I got 4 of our big needs there: linebacker, safety, corner, and I got a nice, fun player for Jalen Hurts for the foreseeable future. As we're looking at pick number 97, my last pick of this draft. Actually, I really like Jacob Cowling too. Anis Smith is a really good slot receiver as well.
I have a question for you, Dives.
Go for it, man.
If you had your just even regardless of who's there and who's not there at running back, who would be your favorite running back for the Eagles to take in a slot like this?
My number 1 running back in this class, funny you say, is Audric Estime, and he is sitting here at pick number 97. I'm going to just make that selection. My running backs are kind of all over the place. We haven't touched on that yet, but is the most variable position in this class. It's really interesting, but Estime can kind of give you a lot of everything. I think he's so freaking underrated.
Love him.
So I would be really happy with this draft. I always get really bad grades from PFF. Oh my God, here we are. But anyway, Cameron Kinchens, number 1 in a trade back. I did one Kool-Aid. It didn't work out. I must have hit the wrong button. But Edgerrin Cooper, Mike Sanderstill, Malachi Corley, Audric Estime. Estime to kind of go with Kenny G next season. Malachi Corley finally gives the Eagles a young piece to look forward to moving forward. At more so depth-wise, Mike Sainristil is an elite athlete. Eagles fans will love him. That guy flies around, and that guy's a big-time playmaker, man. He just has a nose for the football. Edgerrin Cooper is a beast, and Cameron Kinchens. I got my number one safety, my number one linebacker, my number one running back, and my number one slot receiver. I'm really good. I'm really happy.
All right. Can you imagine, like, we get the Matt Rule saying, I wanted Brock Purdy, but they told me no. Can you imagine a GM like at the podium, like 2 years after being like, yeah, I wanted Kool-Aid, but I clicked the wrong button? It'd be great for content. Virtual draft. Yeah, I accidentally clicked the wrong button, accidentally left the Zoom room, got jumped, ran out of time on the clock.
Everyone, by the way, this is a random aside. Everyone went nuts about that Matt Rule quote. Brock Purdy had 2 really good games against him in college and beat him once. I actually don't think he was probably lying.
Yeah.
I just think the safety position is so vital, man. And Cameron Kinchens, I think I have him number 14 on my big board.
Wow.
I'm that high on him. He's definitely going to be one of my guys. Just like Brian Branch last year, I am just head over heels on Cameron Kinchens. Just a Swiss Army knife, a guy that can just provide so many different roles, and giving Vic Fangio that core piece he needs on this defense. A young stud to build around is Cameron Kinchens, man. D- is ridiculous. Come on, PFA.
All right, so there is Deibs playing out a scenario of the Eagles finally going defensive back in the first round, and he traded back from 22 to 30 with the Ravens, picked up pick 62, and then got the guys that he mentioned earlier, Cameron Kinchens, safety out of Miami, Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker, edge rusher out of Texas A&M, Mike he said his name, cornerback out of Michigan, Malachi Corley, wide receiver out of Western Kentucky, and halfback Audric Estime out of Notre Dame. So that's scenario number one. Now we're going to go to another scenario here. And Mark, you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I can go. Actually, you have the board already, or?
Yeah, I've got 2 of them up here. I'll go first.
Let's start a new one then. Or do you have? Never mind. Sorry, bad radio. You have one ready to go. That's up to the Eagles. Just go ahead and do that for you.
Okay, so remember my scenario we're going to play out is that sadly Jason Kelce has decided to call it quits, hang up the cleats. And so the Eagles are going to do what the Eagles are going to do. They're going to address offensive line in the first round of the draft. They've spent their last 3 first-round picks on defensive linemen. They go offensive line this year. This is not a strategy that I'm a huge fan of, but we'll see how it plays out here.
I'm only going 1 thumbs down because my other arm's in a sling.
Fair. I imagine the other one. So, but there is a guy that I'm really high on. I talked about him on the last podcast as a massive Senior Bowl winner. He's a riser. He gets the first round buzz now, and he deserves it. And it's Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. Now, he's a center, but he played right guard in 2022. He played both right and left guard at the Senior Bowl and looked good. I think the Eagles in this scenario, they would be drafting Jackson Powers Johnson with the anticipation of Cam Jurgens being the center and JPJ playing right guard. Now, obviously, you can battle that out in training camp and see how it shakes out. I thought Cam Jurgens struggled a little bit at right guard this year. So that's what I'm looking at in this scenario. The Eagles will go Jackson Powers Johnson at 22. They would maybe try to trade back in a situation like this. Obviously, since I'm pigeonholed into taking an offensive lineman, I can't do that. He might not be there. So that puts me on the clock again at pick 50. There's several guys that I kind of like in this range. Chop Robinson's there if you wanted to go edge rusher. There's safeties on the board. There's wide receivers on the board, but I do think you have to take safety. I have not fully decided because I haven't really watched a lot of safety film yet where I'm at on Tyler Nubin versus Cam Kinchens, but I will take Nubin for the sake of difference from Deibs here. So safety out of Minnesota, Tyler Nubin comes in, he can play opposite Reed Blankenship. Sidney Brown is probably relegated to your third safety role again, but that's okay. So Nubin, Mark's fist pumping here. Do you have him higher than Kinchens?
Yeah, I love Nubin. I really, really like Nubin. He's a guy I've liked for like a couple of years at Minnesota, and he's got size. He's got a nose for the ball. I mean, he's got 9 picks in the last 2 years, 12 picks in the last 3 years. He can play the run. He can play the pass. I think he's a modern safety.
Yeah. All right. So that puts me with pick 54 now. We've addressed offensive line. We have addressed safety. You could go some different ways with this pick. Heck, Cameron Kinchins is still here. We could double dip at safety, but we know the Eagles won't do that. Could go with Trotter. I kind of want to go with a wide receiver though. And so I'm going to take Xavier Worthy out of Texas here at pick 54. I think Worthy is a really explosive player. His size profile is maybe a little concerning on a team that's already got Devontae Smith. That's something that I could see the Eagles being concerned about, but we'll take Xavier Worthy at pick 54, and then we'll spin it here and see what we get at pick 97. Okay, 97. Let's see. Mason Smith, defensive lineman out of LSU, is there. Max Melton. I kind of like Max Melton quite a bit. Cornerback out of Rutgers. He was one of my Senior Bowl winners.
I like both the guys you just named. I have a question for you.
All right.
The same question I asked Dives. Do you have an RB1 yet that you are saying would be your favorite fit on the Eagles, regardless of if he's there or not?
Yeah, I don't know. I am not firm on this, but I kind of like Bucky Irving out of Oregon. I think he's a fun player. I'm not sure if he's the best fit with the Eagles. Because they've kind of got Kenny Gainwell who can catch some passes, and that the best fit with the Eagles might be a little bit more of a downhill runner, especially if they do get under center a little more next year. But I kind of like Bucky Irving.
I love both of your and Dives answers because Bucky Irving's my RB1 and Audric Estime is my RB2. So I'd be very happy with the Eagles taking either of them.
Mark, you're spoiling next week's show for the listeners already.
Yeah, well, that could change, by the way.
You never know.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and go cornerback here because I do like Max Melton. I am not sure the Eagles go cornerback at all in this draft. I think they've got a lot of young guys at the positions. I don't think it's necessarily anything that should prevent you from adding depth, though. So I will take Max Melton here. Let me scroll down and make sure I'm not missing anybody else. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and just lock that in. So I forget the Eagles don't have a 4th round pick. I should have just made it a 3-round mock draft. So in the 1st round, we take Jackson Powers Johnson, obviously with the sad Jason Kelce news that we just totally made up for this scenario. In the 2nd round, took Tyler Nubin, safety out of Minnesota, and wide receiver Xavier Worthy out of Texas. And then in the 3rd round, took cornerback Max Melton out of Rutgers. So, Mark, how do you feel about this draft overall? Aside from taking a, offensive lineman in the 1st round.
Yeah, I love the other 3 picks. There'll be guys that I'll be targeting as well. Maybe not in this draft to maybe be different. Besides Nubin, you can't prevent me from Nubin potentially. But Worthy's a guy I've mocked a lot. He fits right into the slot. Melton's a guy I've mocked a lot. He fits right into the slot on the other side of the ball. So it would kind of fit the slot role for both sides of the ball.
Would you have concerns that with your wide receiver room that you're building such a room of outliers if you had Devontae Smith and Xavier Worthy as 2 of your receivers?
No, because I think at this point, Devontae Smith's past that, right? Like, I think we know what he is. And he had a down year this year, I will say. I did think he regressed this year compared to where he had been.
I don't mean so much in like not able to make it in the league, but I mean, it clearly shows up anytime he's asked to run block or block in the screen game. He just can't do it. So I do wonder if that could be problematic, but it wouldn't stop me from taking him, but it would give me just a little bit of pause.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I just think when you have Brown, you have Goddard, and then presumably whoever the 4th receiver will be should be a blocking receiver. I just think you can figure out ways to scheme around that, and it shouldn't be that hard. And I think Kellen Moore will be able to do things like that. I think he take advantage. Again, I just think Smith, I'm past worrying about his frame at this point, even though I just don't want him to block.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's bring up the simulator here and let's spin up yours. And so we're going to operate under we'll actually do it because PFF will let us trade players. So we'll trade.
Pause.
Oh, shoot.
That's okay. That's okay.
Did I go too far?
Let me scroll up a little bit. Let me just see. All right. I think we still have Kool-Aid on the board. I guess Wiggins is gone.
Yeah, Wiggins went number 11 to Minnesota.
Yeah, let's try to move up here with Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I'll give up 22. I'll take 20. And I will give up let's say 160. Let's see if that'll work. Yeah, let's do that. Oh, it didn't work. It didn't matter. They didn't take my guy. He saved me. You and Dodge both did the same thing there, pressing the resume draft instead of proposed trade. It's right next to each other.
Yeah.
Kool-Aid's right there. Bada bing, bada boom. We'll do that. But go to trade real quick before I take.
You want to go ahead and trade Reddick before?
Yeah, we can make that trade. The one I've been doing, because I think it makes a lot of sense fit-wise, the Texans need an edge rusher on the other side of Anderson. They have some money to mess around with. So I've been doing 59 for Reddick. Another thing that makes sense is the Falcons, but I think they're going to use that second for Fields potentially. But I saw someone say the Falcons second and Tyler Algier, or the Falcons third and Tyler Algier for Hassan Reddick. I don't want to place any value on any running back in a trade because you can find them anywhere. So I would rather just get a second. So 59 for Reddick. They've been accepting this usually. And it worked. So I have an extra second to mess around with. And I'm going to take Kool-Aid McKinstry right here. I think Shane might be right. I think Howie does not like to take defensive backs early, whether that be because he's not very good at it or because for whatever reason it may be, it seems that is the case. But that would be my number one need, either safety or corner. I desperately want them to take a defensive back. After that, it becomes that would be a home run of I have a Eagles big board and Kool-Aid is literally number 4 on it. Even though he's probably around number 13 on my overall big board. After that, the edge rushers I would take a look at are gone. Tyler Nubin is gone in this situation. He would be my obvious next pick. Kamari Lassiter's gone. Braylon Trice is gone. So now that means I have a glut of wide receivers that I consider all right around the same to me. So I'm going to dip into that right here, and I'm going to go. Actually, I lied because I have a pick coming up in 4 picks. I'm going to make another pick to let that glut of wide receivers determine itself out and take one at 54. So at 50, I'll agree with Dibes, and I'll take Cameron Kinchins. He's my number 2 safety on my board. I'd rather this be Tyler Nubin, but safety really drops off, I think, after that. Bullock, I like Kalen Bullock, but I think he's in a different tier than Tyler Nubin and Cameron Kinchins. Then at 54, the receiver that I wanted is still sitting right there for me, and it's actually my wide receiver 4, which I think will end up being a little, controversial, but it's Xavier Legette. I really like Xavier Legette, and this maybe isn't the perfect fit situation for a slot, but man, the upside with him is just too hard for me to turn down.
You can also put Devontae Smith in the slot as well,
yeah,
and keep Legette on the outside, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I love Xavier Legette. That's like a non-Eagles take. Wherever Xavier Legette goes, I think there's a high chance that guy turns out. He's probably a little bit of a boom or bust guy, but I think that he could turn into an absolute superstar. After that, so I locked down a corner, I locked down a safety, I locked down a wide receiver. Let's go down and let's make the linebacker people happy, and let's bring them home. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I think that would be a great story, and it goes beyond the story because he's my linebacker 1. I think he's the best linebacker in this class, and I can get him at 59. And that's not me really disagreeing with Dives. I have Trotter at 42, and Cooper at 43. So in terms of my overall list, so they're right there back to back to each other. So that locks down that need. That means I'm probably going to turn to either interior O-line or the running back position. Can I see interior O-line?
You can. Ooh,
Yeah.
Cedric Van Pran. I remember talking about him last year before he went back to school, and now his draft stock kind of dropped a lot.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy to me. I have him higher than consensus, right around the top 70. And then let me take a look at running back. Yeah, it's really hard for me to not take Irving or Estime. I'll for the sake of being different, I'll take an interior. I'll take Cedric Van Pran. Cedric Van Pran. They stick with their love of Georgia Bulldogs here, and they go ahead and get another
Georgia lineman specifically.
Yeah, exactly. And they get it for the other side of the ball. They can go back to their practice days. Imagine that, like you're a Georgia guy, and it's like, wait, I have to go deal with Jalen Carter again? Like, what the heck? Like, I don't want to do this. No, but Cedric Van Pran's a guy he's played a lot of football at a really high level against the best pass rushers in the world, and he's held up in every possible situation. I think he's ranked far too low. Maybe you know why. Like, why did he fall? Because I don't think he graded out that poorly this year. It's an interesting situation, but I think some of its interior O-linemen tend to drop in general. But yeah, I think Cedric Van Pran is a guy who I'd be really excited, and I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's kind of one of the guys that they're targeting. I'm sure they'll have Jason Kelsey scout the day 2 offensive lineman and pick one like he did with Cam Jurgens. And I wouldn't be shocked if it was Cedric Van Pran. I mean, yeah, he had his best PFF grade this year, 2023 at 77.9. Didn't allow any sacks, allowed only 13 hurries, like 6'4", 310. Played 14, 15, and 15 games the last 3 years. I know he's just a center, but I really like Cedric Van Pran in terms of his fit, just sliding right in and playing center from day one.
Yeah, maybe he dropped because of Jackson Powers Johnson, and there's an unspoken rule that only one center can be drafted in the top 2 rounds every year.
Zach Frazier has kind of taken his thunder too. That people really like Zach Frazier. I have Frazier a spot above Van Pran, but I think that I feel like we talk about this every year. Centers get undervalued. I think because I just don't know why they're less important than guards, especially every year when we see about 5 to 10 times in an NFL game when a starting center goes out and it dramatically impacts the game because the backup center comes in and loses them the game, whether that's due to blocking, whether it's due to penalties, whether it's due to snapping. It feels like we see that 5 to 10 times a year. I think center is, if not more valuable than guard, at least as valuable as guard.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say center is more important than guard. But okay, so that is Mark's draft. In his scenario, Hassan Reddick is traded for a 2nd-round pick to the Houston Texans, a pick that he later used to select Jeremiah Trotter Jr. But before he did that, he took quarterback Kool-Aid McKinstry, safety Cameron Kinchins, wide receiver Xavier Legette, and then Trotter Jr. with the Hassan Reddick pick. And then in the 3rd round, he got Cedric Van Pran, center out of Georgia. So there you have it. A look at 3 different scenarios. You guys can let us know what you think. I meant to give the spiel up front, but don't yell at us on Twitter. Mock drafts are not saying what will happen. Mock drafts, every time I post a mock draft, somebody says, that guy won't be there. It's like, well, he was in the simulation. And they're really just about playing out scenarios. It's not an attempt at accuracy. I'm not saying, we're not saying these are the picks the Eagles will make. It's just an interesting way to talk about prospects and who could be there, given different situations. So there's 3 different situations. You guys let us know what you think of those. If you're watching here on YouTube, drop it in the comments. If you were listening on Twitter, you can shout us out on Twitter. That's going to about do it, though, for this episode of the BGN Draft Show. We're going to be back next week. We'll be back into our positional rankings. I think we're going to do running backs next week. We'll knock out a position group a week for the next few weeks until the combine, and then we'll take a break and talk combine winners and losers, and then we'll get back to the rankings. So if you guys keep it tuned here, we'll get you through all the position groups prior to the draft with a few big board fights along the way. Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to get off your chest here, the draft related?
No, I wish I would have gotten an edge there since I traded Hassan Reddick, but that's the let Nolan Smith cook plan. I guess, if you draft a defensive end in the first round, he should probably be counted on to play a big role in year 2. So I think people were freaking out about the Reddick kind of idea. If they were able to get a day 2 pick for Reddick, it wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the BGN Draft Show. If you enjoyed the show, be sure you hit that subscribe button so you get every show from the BGN radio feed. Johnny and I will be dropping a show later this week, breaking down part 2 of the Kellen Moore offense, focusing on the passing game. If you missed part 1, we talked a lot about the running game and how he uses different run designs and how motion plays into that. We're going to run it back talking about the passing game, so be sure you check that out. You can check us all out on Twitter. I'm at Shane Haff NFL. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot, and Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. We will catch you guys next week for another episode of the BGN Draft Show. Go Birds.